Koedash Duinda Munugug Awian Wagosh Indigu Minawa Migizi and Dodame Ode Gazagaswaji Mekog and Dun Jaba. So I'm Wagosh, Anton or Tony Treuer, and I'm a professor of Ojibwe here at Bemidji State. Really excited to have you all join us today and really look forward to having Dr. Michael Sullivan, Migizi, come and share a little bit about what the work he's been doing with the late Larry Smallwood and many other things. A lot of Dr. Sullivan's work has taken place in Mille Lacs, and although he's worked with elders really throughout Wisconsin and Minnesota, and I'll give you a little orientation to some of what's been happening in Mille Lacs in terms of language and culture revitalization. You know, for those of you who aren't aware, Mille Lacs is a pretty small community relative to some of the other Ojibwe reservations and tribal populations in our area. But in spite of that, kind of being these kind of small pieces of land and population and surrounded by a sea of white resorts and sport fishermen and things like that, they have kept our ceremonial drum culture alive with greater success than most anybody else. And they've been a tremendous support. A few years ago, we had, well, 20 years ago, we had some drums repatriated to the White Earth Reservation. And it was really the folks in Mille Lacs who helped teach us everything we needed to know about what is said at the drums, the songs that are used, and so forth. And principal among the folks who were helping with that work was the late Larry Smallwood, who was really a phenomenal speaker. You're going to hear a lot more about him and his personality and so forth from Dr. Sullivan, so I won't steal his thunder with regard to that. But in more recent years, you know, after the advent of casino gaming for Native peoples, there was a huge shift across tribal populations. So if you look until 1969, 58% of Native people are below the poverty line. Today, 28% of Native people are below the poverty line. And although 28% of the population below the poverty line is gross and unacceptable and warrants a major intervention, it also means we shaved 30 whole percentage points off of Indigenous poverty. It's not like rising tides lifted all boats. Some places handled things very differently. And Mille Lacs was very forward thinking about that. They, for starters, saved half their money from gaming, and now their endowment produces more money than gaming. They put a fluent speaking Ojibwe elder in all the classrooms in the tribal school. And more recently, they had some major interventions. I went to a meeting, Dr. Sullivan was there too, and this was right maybe a year before the pandemic. And they said, we have some money left over from grants and other revenue streams, and we want to do something real about language revitalization. And I said, well, how much money are you talking about? He said, well, it's maybe $14 million. I almost spit my teeth out. At that time, they had identified only 25 remaining fluent first speakers of Ojibwe in the entire reservation at Mille Lacs. And they were all elders over 70. There was no way to send them back to school for 5 years, get a teaching degree, and come back and run a program for the next 30 years. So I said, we have to do some other things. How about let's develop Rosetta Stone for Ojibwe? Let's do some books. Let's publish material. And they said, well, yeah, let's do all of that. And so we got to work, and it was exciting but challenging work in many different ways. We worked with all of the fluent speakers in Mille Lacs. We paired each up with a second language learner, transcriber. We would convene groups of 50 to 75 people to work on books. And in just a 3-day session, we could crank out many, many, many stories. And one of the things I'm really proud of that came out of the work was that we convinced the Minnesota Historical Society Press to publish all of that work, even though no one on their staff can read it. And so initially, one of the things that would happen when there were Native people who wanted to publish something, especially if it was in a tribal language, is a press would think there's no market for that. How are we're going to sell 2 copies? but the Concise Dictionary of Minnesota Ojibwe must have sold close to 50,000 copies. And there is a big market out there. Mille Lacs subvented the publications. We did 5 books. We had to teach the elders how to work through the pandemic. So we didn't want to risk anyone's life. And so we ended up sending a grandkid to each house with a computer and the Zoom connections. And, we'd had to find new ways to do the work in those different circumstances. When we did that, sometimes it was hilarious. Like I called Carol Nickerboyne one time. She's one of the elders. He said, "Hey, Asin, it's time for your session." "Oh, Wabush. Well, I got my coat on. I'm going to the casino." I said, "The casino? There's a pandemic. You need to stay home." "Oh, well, yeah, let's work on the language. That's more important." So she sat down. We worked for a couple hours on a recording session. Then she said, "I'm going to the casino now. My niece has been waiting in the car the whole time." But that's kind of how they were. They were like super excited to do language work. And it was a hard time too. We lost 20% of our fluent speakers of Ojibwe during the pandemic, including a number of the people that we worked with on all of those books. And that was horrible and heartrending experience. When we finally came out of the pandemic, the other thing we were working on simultaneously was Rosetta Stone. And so many of you may have seen that. There are now 2 years of Rosetta Stone released. By the way, Rosetta Stone is one of many kind of language learning platforms, and it uses voice and talking flashcards, video, audio, and it makes use of artificial intelligence, so it can correct your pronunciation as you interact with the app in real time, and your grammar and things like that, which is a big lift for a language like Ojibwe, which has a really complex grammar system. And some tribal languages, Muskogee Creek has a 2-year development, Navajo has a 1-year development. We will be the first to have a 6-year development for an indigenous language. And it has many different ramifications. So once it's all out there, the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe, which hires many native people, but many non-native people as well, can say working for the Mille Lacs Band of Ojibwe is a privilege. We expect everybody who takes that privilege to exhibit this level of fluency in the Ojibwe language. Here are the tools to do it with the assessments built right in and our expectation as a condition of your employment. So it's showing that language revitalization is also about sovereignty and many other things. And so, I think Mille Lacs has been quite prescient in seeing these things. There's much more to say about, how we did and are continue to doing this kind of work. There are many different challenges. And one of the things that's been really cool to see is the way that our elders have embraced new technologies, new ways of sharing information. You used to hear a lot, language revitalization, that has to start at the home. And if it has to start at the home, you're saying it can never start. Dr. Sullivan has arrived, by the way. And one of the things we've seen, and I think, Larry Smallwood was certainly one of the people who did this. At first, he was distrustful maybe of writing it down with a certain orthography, or even the value of recording things. But through the work that Dr. Sullivan has done and many others, that he just totally changed his perspective. He's like, put a double A there, and he's correcting the double vowel stuff to make sure it's just right, and has embraced all of these technological things. Certainly a truly gifted storyteller. While Dr. Sullivan's getting set up, I'll mention just a couple other things. After we came out of the pandemic, we had a launch event for the Rosetta Stone and for the new books we had done. And Joe Naquinabe, the senior, was there, and he's one of the esteemed elders in Mille Lacs, a great speaker of the language and a ceremonial drum chief. And during the pandemic, his sister passed away from COVID. And he also had a brother who had COVID and heart complications and passed away. And I thought he'd get up there and say, this is just the toughest time we've ever been through. And he said something that I'll never forget. He said, we've been through a lot. We've been through a lot the past few years, and we've been through a lot the past few hundred years. But I have to say that seeing all of these young people coming around, seeing the work they've been doing to record our elders, seeing what we've been able to produce, knowing that our elders will be teaching people our language for hundreds of years to come. I have to say that doing this work has been the happiest time of my life. It's such a profound thing to hear. And it was a reminder that for those of us who are interested in our language and culture, who want to learn these things, who hope that they will live, that it's exciting and empowering to have tools and resources available to help us do it. But it was a reminder too that it is very healing for our elders to have their knowledge embraced and to find ways to amplify their voice. And so this is one of the things that Dr. Sullivan has been doing for many, many years. We've known each other for a very long time. And he's a pretty famous native, famous in many ways. So lead singer and primary composer for Pipestone, one of the world-renowned powwow drum groups. He is of and for Anishinaabe people, grew up in his native community at Makudere, has some wonderful elders in his immediate family, and who have really taken him under his wing at different times. The late Harold Frog comes to mind as someone who really looked out for Migizi as he was coming up. But in addition to that, he pursued the highest levels of higher education with a PhD in linguistics. He applied and continues to apply that to the advancement of our language in many ways. For many years, served as resident linguist for Wadukudading, our first and still kind of flagship Ojibwe language immersion school. He has done tremendous work, not just with the kids there, but with the entire staff to build up their ability as the delivery vehicles for our language. It's really a remarkable set of gifts. He's well published now. His book, Revitalization in Southwestern Ojibwe, has really been an important contribution for our understanding of Ojibwe linguistics and syntax. And his hot new release, Plums or Nuts, Ojibwe Stories of Anishinaabe Humor, is something we've all been really excited about because Dr. Sullivan spent so much time working with Larry Smallwood and recording stories. A lot of the content that they recorded is also fed into the Ojibwe People's Dictionary. If you're not familiar with that publication, the Ojibwe People's Dictionary is a living dictionary for Ojibwe where you can click on words and you can hear the words from naturally recorded speech and example sentences. For some of the entries, you can click on a morpheme, the smaller meaningful part of a word, and see other words with a similar morphology. There are tributes to Larry Smallwood on the Ojibwe People's Dictionary, including some audio excerpts that are sitting on there for people to check out. And so there's really no way to overstate the contributions Dr. Sullivan's been making to our language over the years and continues to make. In addition to that, he is a family man and he's been raising all of his kids. He's got some of them out the door and a few more on the cusp of launching. And it's great to see his integrity, dedication to his wife, children, community, member of ceremonial drums, and everything going on in our ceremonial world. And I really appreciate that about him as well, that he's not just an Ivory Tower native, but he's kind of got the best of the Ivory Tower and the wigwam as well, and certainly tremendous knowledge to share. Did you need a minute or so before you're ready to go?
I can rock and roll. Can you, somebody, we're trying to get on here so I can show the feature.
You want to show OPD?
Yeah.
I can boot that up for a share on here.
Cool.
Do you need audio or PowerPoint?
So I got audio. What I wanted to do is bring up the text of the book so I can show people who don't have the book as it.
Okay. I'll pull up OPD while you get started.
All right.
Do you, is voice coming through okay in here, or do you want the mic? Or do you want the mic? With the mic. How's that coming through online? Is the mic better or worse? Okay. Okay. Ibagi Winini. With no further ado, Dr. Michael Sullivan.
There we go. Foi que which way the basic command be nas agi which way how is Slavish the way mommy kids of it. Wow. I mean, mommy wants to see my Anishinaabe, we are making to go to mommy on it. The way mom and now we are one. We are in business. So good afternoon. Now I apologize for running late, man. Driving is underestimating distance and I'm a former Paul singer. I still sing Paul and I used to come to Cass Lake Paul all the time. I was like, 3 hours to get there. Late, so I apologize. And August is one of the first people to be late. Ever late. Well, maybe it's over this. I think that my experience is that I was early, drinking coffee, waiting for everybody else to show up. Apologize for running late. Ones are not spoken out. It's super exciting for language learners, language enthusiasts. So Larry Smallwood, as Water stated, is he was a great storyteller. He was one of the prize elders. He was a really, really good friend of mine, mentor of my language journey. So I learned how to talk Ojibwe as a younger man. I'm still a very young guy, a little bit younger. I got serious in my pursuit to be an everyday user of Ojibwe, an everyday user of my home and children. And Amik was one of the ones that really took me under his wing and put me in the sheet. And if you know Amik, Amik had language students all over the place. And he taught in many different communities. Everybody who knew Amik knew his humor. And he was really, really funny dude. And he was a master at Ojibwe shock humor. He would say things in our language that were like, oh man, did you just say that? Borderline inappropriate, depending on what lens you looked at it from. And he insisted on our own standards being prominent in our own culture, especially with regard to our language. So long story short, nothing was off limits for a good joke when it came to the language. And the title of the book is Plums Are Nuts. And if you want to know what that means, why it be such a silly name for the Ojibwe book, Plums Are Nuts, you have to read the last story of the book. And that's where the punchline kind of comes through. So I'm not going to spoil that for you guys here today. I'll have to get the book and read the last story to figure out why the heck we call it Plums Are Nuts. So I knew Amik a long time. When I was about 12 years old, he was hired by the Ojibwe Ojibwe School to come in and be a sort of mentor to our language and culture teaching staff. And back then, when I was 12 years old, just about everybody over 60 spoke Ojibwe on reservations. And all kinds of Hall of Fame elders that worked in the school. And Amik was kind of the ringleader to come through and teach them how to do language lessons, teach them how to make books and homeworks. And he worked with a lot of the younger people in that skill language stuff. And he took a liking to me. He started MCing our powwows probably about 30 years ago. And despite every powwow we had, Bill Cioli was our MC. And he took a liking to me then. I was a singer and a drum. And when I started to get a little bit older, he would call me up to fill in for him on the microphone when he had to run to the bathroom and he'd go have a smoke and would have me fill in for a couple songs on the microphone. And that was little did I know him breaking in to be a powwow MC eventually. So, but I really, really missed the old man. He left us in 2017. And it's probably about 10 years earlier than any of us expected to check out on it. So we had a lot of unfinished work left to do. So the book came out of visits between the two of us. As Wallace mentioned, we got Amik hired up to be elder speaker for our Ojibwe People's Dictionary. And the Ojibwe People's Dictionary, if you didn't know already, right, is an online dictionary housed by the University of Minnesota. And I was a research assistant for that project. And through that research, we launched this big talking dictionary about 2011, 2012 in public. So I recorded the mic once a week for about 8 hours a day, about 5 years. We just piled it on, right? Any word, sentence, story that he was willing to share. Sometimes he had a song he wanted me to know. We record a song and talk about the song. Well, one time I went to him and I said, I want to start doing stories, man. Tell me some stories. He said, all right, you know. First time I go to record stories, he asked me if I know how to change a tire. You know how to change a tire? I said, yeah. He said, yeah, but you know how to change a tire in Ojibwe. I said, probably not. You know, you know what to call a jack or a spare tire or anything. No, I do not know how to change a tire in Ojibwe. He said, well, turn that thing on. And he tells me the story about he's going down to the Twin Cities and gets it all out and goes step by step on how to change a tire in Ojibwe. And when we get done with the story, he tells me, he says, all right, now type it up, translate it, and bring it back if you want to do more. And I was so excited to finally have recorded the background stories. I ran down, so Rutledge, Minnesota had an office, and ran down to Hinckley at the coffee shop, sat there till they picked me out, got home, finished it up, and I got home. Next morning, I was at his office before he was even there. And the story all picked up, translated. He said, all right, let's do some more. So every time I go see him, they tell me 2 or 3 short little funny silly stories. And the thing about Michael, he hardly ever told any serious stories, right? Unless it was our winter time on the school time. All his other stories were it's kind of funny little pointless short stories. I ended up going down to Minneapolis about a month ago and giving Nora is the current editor of the dictionary now that John Nichols has retired. Nora's been doing upkeep. So I went down to see Nora about a month ago and I brought a flash drive and had all the audio. And I asked her, I said, can you get all the audio in the dictionary? She said, let me see what I can do. So last Friday, we went to Mille Lacs, the first dictionary, the first book launch event at the museum. And Nora got hold of me at 5:30, half hour before the event started, and said, the audio is live. So if you go to the Ojibwe People's Dictionary now, on the home page, they got a little write-up about the book, and then all 25 stories of audio for them are there. So we have the book you can read along, right, as the next telling the stories, and that's the real treat about this book. One thing I have to let people know, and disclaimer, is the book isn't written for English readers. This never crossed our mind that we would create a book for English readers. So the English side of the text isn't as smooth as it probably could have been if you would have designed it like that. So the English side of the book sort of serves as a roadmap to the Ojibwe. It's more of a roughed out translation. And translating Amik Ojibwe was tough because he wanted the English to sound like he sounded when he spoke English. So a lot of times he would add things to the translation that weren't necessarily in Ojibwe, or he would take things out of the translation that took away from Ojibwe. It's constant back and forth on how we could capture the English translations while still doing justice to the Ojibwe while still pleasing America. If you knew America, he was a tough guy to please. But I wanted to show that to you because that's the trick of getting the book. Some of the stories are so much better than you hear him tell it. And when you go to these book reading events like this, a lot of times somebody will read out of the book, and that's not always the funnest, especially when we have an audio land. I'm going to pull up the text now for everybody. The first story I'm going to show you is called Ojibwe Mother. And something to make sure reading this from me and move on. And if they're not an Ojibwe reader, I'll highlight the English side. All right, play this on.
Notes go in on Anishinaabe because Kima Yaya Mandaene Mahashu Bishop as a immigrant in the Georg Anishinaabe. Not to get killed to Marsh. And I could wait to my game with Anishinaabe. In a tabak cannon. How do you say hi? Oh, Oh, Anin. Ja, die kennen. Anin. Hoe heb je die kennen Anin? Ja, ben ik als ik ook weet. Anin, ik ken hem weer. I need to say hello, friend, a good friend. Oh, you guys going to Moab and those of you to the out. You guys are going to Moab. And they were going, oh, Pagones. Anin Pagones. You get it, but you know, once. Miss you get it. Ah, we have been together. Anin Pagones. Wow, chicken Moab with the goodness and Abid. When a guy could have Abid this guy's in the moment. We guys are in the Moab. We were able to not get him here, Pagones. Anin does. Usually Kana. That means you were the whole. What Chabapero Chamukumanish. Now you could give us a beach get to go. There's Gay Toya being together about people put to on in Bagones. Bagones.
Here's on all of these. All right. 25 stories total. All of them are humorous in nature, of some sort or another. Lots of references in the book to the times in which they grew up. So Amik grew up at Ojibwe, and if you know anything about the Mille Lacs reservation, is Mille Lacs was historically settled by three different sort of communities, three different bands lumped together for the Mille Lacs reservation. So the easternmost band of the Mille Lacs, the easternmost group of the Mille Lacs band, is where they call Lake Lena, Ojibwe. That's where Amik grew up in Ojibwe and spent a lot of time in between Ojibwe and Mille Lacs town property. And had a real fascinating life. He's always Anishinaabe, I know the side of Wabash, I was born in BC, you were born in BC too. That's two from Eagle Clan language warriors born in BC. And a mixed dad was a gangster. His dad was a gangster. Only one there was he was a gangster, he got locked up with the wife, and Mike was a little baby. He tells that story in the first story of the book, how he grew up. I'll make one to talk about his uncle named Kawash. Kawash was better known by his family and his community as Ojibwe. Ojibwe and typically hot water. And call him hot water because he was always in trouble. And half the time he was in trouble, it was on purpose. He would talk about how the Ojibwe would be walking up the driveway and kind of walk it over, if you got some say, if you talk about it, walk where the man came in, usually ash shot and raising hell with the kids. He was a mixed uncle, and a mixed loved him, and Mick would tell me about him, and he was the best storyteller anybody had ever seen in the world. So many Tawash. And then Tawash would come over and he just beg him to tell stories. In the winter time, come on, uncle, tell a story, your stories, come on. And beg him and beg him and beg him. And every time that Tawash agreed, he'd mess up the stories on purpose. He'd say something like, but you go, you get mad, man, that's not how it goes, it was in that common book. And he messed the story up on purpose. And Amik said that as he got to be a little bit older, he noticed every time his old lady, every time she asked him Kawash to tell stories, he tell real stories and tell them all night long. And Amik said when he was about 12 years old, he noticed that the old lady was giving him tobacco. She gave him tobacco before she asked him to tell the real stories. When the kids asked him to give him tobacco, he never tell the real one. But anyway, he tells some stories about his young in the book. So this story I'm playing for you right now is the story is number 5. Here it is.
Is there any chance we can go without the microphone? It makes it really challenging to hear.
Basic. Even, it's just shame, it was a shame, I mean. My great uncle, but I went to Jim Clark's uncle. Kishaga Mede, he's really not. And I wasn't the singing, because you walk out and chicken walk, good doing Stillwater. Knew it's going to be easy to get Kansas, knew it's going to be Ojibwe Bay. When I get them out, we cannot get them out to it. Went to Chevrolet Squad and P2 Grenade. Long as I need to, I got piece of car when the day wasn't in the swell. No, piece of car and was on these. No Virgin cookie in the ball. We just go on to the guys to get back on. Okay, you guys, she get to get back on. To go where the secret go off the board and they. It's more happening, what's said, man. We go. I guess it's December. I'm doing some work for things in the bar, but the end of you know, I will get to bottom. And I guess it's again, the bar over this for people. You want to go to see? No, you do him quick, eh? Migizi, can't I wear some chicken? I also been to get my liquor store. Yeah, okay, to get a toss out and I'll see him. So have a good day. Been to get him on liquor store. May I help you with knocking it? Oh, just give me a half a gallon of white port. I don't know about that, get them all out of white port. We go away, but today we do it block off and show them a nick quick shade and go, come on. And that'll be on once I get them long day. How many know how David don't want to show me nick quick? Say, you gotta pay for that or not. Guy, I told you to give it to me, you gave it to me. You could have, so I get to butt to it. Galvin with the wood on, show me nick quick, maybe what. Chum must say today. We tell us now we kill baby, now we took Nicholasy. And they were saying that you were then I'm going to Chimitigum Gia talk over the Imam and Quid. Chimitigum us now, we kid on your one of the 2 years baby. We beans waving the gossip. They was very get the Columbus on the we get that one. You ain't defrauding an innkeeper. I'm telling you, give me. So he gave it to me. I think I'm going to talk about it. He can't wait 90 days. We got to tell the one and going to be saga. We got to get quite a season when I have to go to Nick.
That sounded interesting. Here.
About 25 minutes.
Oh, well, I'll do one more story for you. I gotta go to Fond du Lac after this. Tomorrow night, we're doing a little book party at the Fond du Lac Tribal Community College. And I gotta go, see the Shemai. Anybody a Shemai? All right, cool. So Joe Shemai, the woman man that this story was about, he was my man. White man.
Yeah, they're just saying try it without the mic.
Okay. So Joe Shabayash was the one who gave me my Anishinaabe name when I was a baby. And he named a lot of my cousins, a lot of my aunts and uncles, a lot of people in our family. He was one of my grandma's really good friends. And he was from Fond du Lac. So Joe Shabayash, there was a Joe Shabayash who passed away probably about 5 or 6 years ago. That was Junior. The one we're talking about here was his dad, Joe Shabayash. I think he passed away in about 96, 97. So he was an old man from Fond du Lac up at the town of Sawyer, Minnesota. That's where Joe was from. And I was pretty close with that old man, my man. And here it turns out he was a mixed uncle by marriage. So a mixed mom's brother was Joe Shabayash. And this is the story that Amik always tells about Joe Shabayash. And I got to go to Fond du Lac next, and I'm gonna be there with the Shabayash of all of his family, and the Shabayash that are my age now are Joe's grandkids. So here's Nude in the Bun. This one's story number 10 in the book. One of my favorites, Nude, my favorite.
Good. No crazy about the target pinnacle. We touch them on the bearings. I mean, came go. No one go be big swimming. Then all of them, I could back to wow. George Bias and I'm sure they are. Last time you use answer, we're not George Bias and in the winter. What people not go the day basic. What not? Me get on that George Bias, so they are. I think I killed it. I gave you kill a cinnamon. You know, I gave go in the oven. So the office and I can. You're about them potato. Ah, George Bias and be in the shop market. So the answer. We were there on Sada. I go now, George Bias and the name. Ah, George Bias and be in the shop market. Oh, well, they don't Sada. No, correct, you got to go on. On museum, so there. George Bias, get died tomorrow. No, can I go with it? Can I go on? Get died tomorrow. You know, big on the new. When yeah, I mean, a bit more as a dog, Shabash, in the use answer. That's I'm going to go be. Never lost the book, I guess. I'm going to show what I was answered about it. But on this is my entire. You answered about it, okay, but. As I was with John Wall, you know, going on to it. Ah, George Bias and get died tomorrow, down there with you know. Hey, yeah. I'm gonna mean, Mars of it, George Bias. Yeah, I'm saying, I'll get you all lost it, George Bias. Can I get over? Yeah, George Bias get died tomorrow. I'm sure I'm sure we'll go running. I think I'm so bored as a man, but that's the board as a man. We could have picked it up to find George Shabash and get died tomorrow. George Shabash and get treated as a man was negative. George Shabash was getting. We don't know the better Anishinaabe and crazy. As you go into my house, where so? Oh, yeah, George Shabash. I don't know, yeah. No, it's not the Davan, you might not have seven Christian to Davan. The man is a Korea, but they don't need us. No, I just too bad. Dog small, no crazy, can you Davan to Leon? You think them. As you're going to move the way. And it's funny when you die tomorrow, when you die tomorrow, push bass and that one. You know, when you ask them, you shot what? Die tomorrow, that one, can you go? Hey, it was dark and okay, as usual. And they did. That's good, I enjoy it. Oh, yeah. But we timed it. Oh, me, talent, going to Anishinaabe, no, me, it's chicken rice. The shot kid over me, make fun of hot dog, we talent. Me, we talent. Mr. Bakanga, I see they know the Bobby got killed. Never modest to Shabazz.
Oh, so that's a cool little cultural thing he shares, and as one of his silly stories, just the tradition of bragging about our brothers-in-law. That's something I try to do with my sons, especially. I really brag up their uncles on their mom's side, even to an exaggerated degree, like a mixed old man did about the Ojibwe. But that's about all for the reading portion. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for me, or if anyone wants to buy a book. I got books for sale, $20. $18.95 if you order them from the press. I've been charging $1 and a nickel for a signature for even $20. You can get them online just about everywhere. So Amazon's got them, Barnes and Noble, all your big distributors have the book. And the audio, remember, is online on dictionary. So I encourage you all to visit that. Any messages or questions from the Zoom landers?
Feel free to share any questions.
Did you guys know Amik? Anybody remember Amik? Too many guys are pretty young. He passed away in 2017, but he was a regular on the microphone. So he, if you ever went to Inger Powwow 2016 or before that, he was usually the MC at Inger Powwow back in the day. Inkley Powwow, if you ever went there, he was always the MC. If you ever came to LCO Powwow, lots of Panema Powwow, he MC Panema Powwow for years. He was so cool, you know, Panema Powwow is Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and that's a marathon. And one thing about MC and a powwow is you are there on the clock, right? So you're on the microphone an hour before the dancers are even ready, and you're on the microphone way after everybody else has gone home. So Amik was so cool. When they call him for Panema Powwow, he'd tell them, he'd say, "Hey, we want to ask you back for the Obashing Labor Day celebration." And he'd say, "All right, well, I can be there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday. But not doing all 4 days. You're not going to get me there all 4 days. You can pick Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Saturday, Sunday, Monday." And so they'd always let him go Sunday night, and he'd make a point to come around to all the drums and remind everybody that we still had to stay another day when he got to go home on Sunday night. So that's how cool he was. He told Panema what he was willing to do, rather than accepting the invitation straight up. So